my topic for this event a total of 4 times. Last year, I had 2 in mind when we were originally scheduled to gather here. When we got the notification in June, 2 months ago, I had another topic in mind. And then between Sunday and Monday this week, I changed it another 2 times. I don't know what you are thinking, but my own conclusion is I'm a bit indecisive. So it only makes sense that the topic I finally decide to speak on circles on dilemmas. So I'll be sharing with you 6 dilemmas that every conflict reporter faces. Alternate title, Why I Am Always Confused Doing My Job. Conflict reporting is one word that fortunately defines itself. If a lecturer were to ask you, what is conflict reporting? And you answer, conflict reporting is any reporting that reports conflict, you would totally be right. But for a journalist, not all conflicts are worthy of getting reported. We mostly focus on armed and violent conflicts. Exciting, right? Now, in Nigeria, we have a lot of newsrooms, but not a lot of niche media organizations. And those we have usually deal with entertainment, business, economy, sport, and so on. And so even those that we have that have desks, those desks focus on security and human rights, and they are not the same thing. Luckily, the trend is changing. And last year, I had the privilege of joining a new organization that focuses on reporting insecurity, humanitarian issues, and related topics. So I have spent several weeks in the northwest and the northeastern region of this country trying to understand the causes, the realities, and the implications of conflict situations. What I'm sharing with you, therefore, are hundreds of hours of work in this space. So let's start. Dilemma number 1, state versus non-state actors. To work effectively as a conflict reporter, you need credibility. And to have credibility, your reporting has to be objective and balanced. The only problem is balance is like the elephant that is being observed by 7 blind men. It means different things to different people, especially the government and non-state armed groups like Boko Haram. For the government, this is what balance looks like. You are not supposed to report the details of conflict. You can just let people know, okay, 10 people died, but how did they die? What were they doing? What is the effect on their families? Don't give them the details, just once in a while. And when there are a series of attacks, as a conflict reporter, you tend to think, should I report all of them or some of them? Should I give people all the details or bury some of the most important information in the 5th paragraph of the report? And then your work as a journalist starts, because of the balancing, to resemble accounting and mathematics. This is also what balancing looks like to the government. Just don't make the government look bad. On the other hand, this is what balancing looks like non-state armed groups to non-state armed groups like Boko Haram. Last year in July, the former leader of Boko Haram, Shekau, released an audio where he threatened media organizations, and he mentioned the name of my organization, Human Angle, because we published an analysis that talked about his interest to broaden his influence to the northwest. And you know Boko Haram does not release empty threats. Back in 2012, if you remember, there was a bomb explosion that affected the Abuja office of this day newspaper because they reported something about beauty pageantries. 7 people died. So at the end of the day, you receive threats from the government, you receive threats from non-state actors, and the public who are reading you either criticize you for doing too little or they condemn you for saying too much. Dilemma number 2, full disclosure or anonymity. It can be difficult sometimes deciding whether you want to reveal the true identities of your interviewees. On the one hand, revealing their true names will give your report credibility. On the other hand, you can be exposing them to a lot of harm. For instance, I've done a lot of reports about internally displaced people with HIV, who are trying not to get stigmatized because of the public perception. Stories about people who were detained by the military and disclosed a lot of information for which they could be targeted. Stories about women forcibly abducted by Boko Haram, who are now tagged Boko Haram wives by the time they return to the society. Stories about former Boko Haram members themselves, who are currently trying to reintegrate themselves into the society. So people like this, you cannot reveal their true names unless you want them to be injured or killed. And then there are times when the interviewee themselves will allow their pictures to be taken, or will say, no problem, use my name. But as a journalist, you exercise discretion in their best interest. Recently, last week I was in Maiduguri, and one of the people I talked to disclosed information about a military institution that are really damning. And then he said, do not use my name. But he also gave a lot of personal information that would have made him easy to track. So even if you use a pseudonym for that kind of person, you still have to figure out a way to make sure that his safety is not being compromised. So this is what we do. We use illustrations and other creative means of protecting the identities of our sources. Dilemma number 3. What do you do with claims that sound too good to be true? I'll give you an example. Last year, a female IDP mentioned to us that back in 2015, when they were at the Bama Hospital IDP camp, which is located in Borno State, approximately 20 to 30 people died every day. As someone from this part of the country, I could not wrap my head around that figure. How can 20 to 30 people die every single day? It just sounds outrageous. But fortunately, I was able to get other sources that corroborated the same estimates and realized it is actually close to the truth. And then you have similar death tolls being given for the Giwa Barracks military institution in Borno State. Or for instance, when I was in Sokoto and somebody mentioned that between 2017 and 2021, between 1 million and 2 million cows in that local government area had been rustled. So what you do is just try to get to the truth of the matter as much as possible. Dilemma number 4, to shoot or not to shoot. Don't worry, I don't carry gun as a journalist. What I mean here is whether you want to take pictures or you just want to sit quietly and observe. And this happens a lot of times when I feel like an asshole for recording people's tragedies. Earlier this year, I was in Gumi local government area to speak to the victims of banditry. And there was the village head of a neighboring village in that community. So my fixer took me to him. And it just happened that in that moment, that very afternoon, his village was under attack. So they were very frantic, they were disturbed, he was making calls, they were bringing victims of gunshots to the local government area for treatment. One of them was referred to the state capital because he was in a very severe situation. And I realized the importance of that moment. I knew it had to be documented. I knew people needed to see the effects of banditry on ordinary lives. But holding my phone and recording felt very uneasy and awkward. Because these are real people. It's not a movie scene. It's happening to people with actual families and relatives. Eventually, we discovered we couldn't use the footage because it would have put the village head in trouble for disclosing such sensitive information. Another example is this. While I was in Maiduguri last week, this young man, his name is Bana Usman, he spent 5 years in the Giwa Barracks, the military detention center at the state capital, and it messed him up. So now he's still grappling with his psychological illness and he's looking for a way to treat himself. So I tried to take the picture to show people how the prolonged detention had affected him. But he did not take it lightly. He always fidgeted when the flashlight came on. It was dark, so I had to use the flashlight. The first time I took it, it covered his face. The second time, the picture came out blurry. The third time, it was still blurry. And I did not want to keep going, so I just left it that way. and we had to use it this way. So it's just awkward taking pictures sometimes as a conflict reporter, and that's one of the dilemmas. Moving on. Dilemma number 5. What are the right labels? A rose, they say, is what is in the name. A rose by any other name will still smell as sweet, right? But not in journalism. Names are very important because you are shaping public opinion, and how you describe people matters a lot. We all know the slang. One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. So are they bandits or terrorists? Are they terrorists or insurgents? Are they a separatist group or a proscribed terrorist group? Are they terrorists or unknown gunmen? Are they vigilantes or militias? Are they activists or agitators? When Kunle Adebajo was arrested in July this year, July 20, I think, you find that there are a lot of discrepancies in how media organizations reported the incident. Some of them called him a Yoruba nation agitator. Some of them said he was a Yoruba freedom fighter. Some said Yoruba activist, self-acclaimed Yoruba activist, campaigner for Yoruba self-determination, Yoruba separatist leader. And Adebajo is not even the most controversial person as far as conflict issues are concerned. On a light note, I was chatting with a friend earlier this week, and as a way to say thank you, she sent me this. I owe you one baby. Thank you so much. Where do you place the comma? Is it, I owe you one baby, or I owe you one baby? So it depends. Interpretation varies from one individual to the other. For one person, it could be, hey, she's just using a sweet word to show our affection. To the other, when are we going to the other room? Finally, do you want to quit or keep going? Honestly, the job can be tough sometimes. When you see a disclaimer on the website that says, this video contains graphic content that some may find disturbing, it could apply to pictures or other sorts of content. Just know that a conflict reporter had to watch that video or see those graphic pictures just so you can have the option of not doing so. I've journeyed through road networks that after I got to my destination, my fixer would say, how was your journey? Because just yesterday, bandits rode on 100 motorcycles and crossed that same road. And I'm like, why didn't you tell me this yesterday? And other times, you find that when people report that Boko Haram has killed certain people or has slaughtered some of their victims of abduction, you don't see the videos. People ask for videos when we share those stories online, but they are so brutal that you just cannot watch them. But some people have to, so it can be tough. When I was in Sokoto State, I met a young man called Umar Mahi in Gatawa. Gatawa is a ward and a town in Sabon Bini local government area. And before he started talking, he spent a few minutes to challenge my mission. And he said, okay, if we gather this information, it is going to be of broad relevance to the target community because we happen to see this many times on several locations. Until now, we have not seen any impact. After collecting the data, what will come next? And I asked myself this question also a number of times. After going to the field and risking your life, after writing the persuasive story, after publishing and sharing on several platforms on social media, what's going to happen? Because eventually, the government is generally not interested in addressing the issues. They just want to hide them. And this is the final dilemma. But then, you also realize that documenting conflict situations alone by itself is a win. Because maybe, just maybe, one day people will start learning from history. And by seeing the works that you've published, they take steps to prevent recurrences of those tragedies. I also hope that more people will join us in this space because Nigeria has so many life-threatening situations. So many victims of crime, of violence, of insecurity, of insurgents, but so little people trying to hear their stories. Thank you for tagging along on this talk.